Evening, folks. Yeah, I don't normally do these things this late at night. I'll tell you that Del Boy is becoming a bit of a cheeky bastard. He's not content with just taking the piss out of me, he's even taking the piss out of Colin. Bloody hell. You're almost as old as me, Del. Well, I thought you are, at least you look older, but anyway. Yeah, good evening. Listen, I hope you've missed me. I'm back in the fold, came back from London yesterday, got back yesterday quite late last night. I'm just double checking. I thought I was going to see something that says you're muted. Yeah, had a great time. I'm not going to talk too much about it because obviously that's what the Friday Waffle's all about. I was thinking about doing this and I thought, nah, it's too late. And I thought, what the hell? I'm off tomorrow, so why don't I do it? So anyway, how are tricks? I hope everyone's all right. Yeah, like I said, I had a really good time in London, but I'll talk about it in the Friday Waffle. So anyway, listen, it's getting late. I just have quickly check to see who's in tonight. We've got Jambon, we've got Del Boy, we've got Colin Jones, we've got 8-Bit Steve, we've got Colin Gregory, and I think that's it. Yeah, so fantastic. Listen, I mean, I only put this out about half an hour ago, and I thought to myself, I'm going to be sitting in here. I mean, if I was to do this and nobody was tuning in, I think I would probably end up saying, "Oh bollocks! I'll just stop it." There's not a lot of point in doing these live things if there's no one actually watching. Evening, Country Road, how are you, mate? Excuse me, I've just got a bit of a nail that's sticking up. Hang on. There we go. Yeah, a cheeky Thursday stream. It's going to be a short one. I'll refrain from any double entendres in case any ladies are watching. So yeah, I thought to myself, we'll mix and match it. We're going to watch the computer program. You've probably all seen these. I mean, all these things are available. I think they're available on YouTube to watch, but obviously you don't get the witty rapport from myself. So yeah, let's just batter straight in. Yeah, a couple of when I was down in London. I met up with one of the guys that watches my channel, Lewis, and we went to a place called the Four Quarters, and Lewis took a picture of me, and somebody made a comment saying it looks like an action man playing one of these little mini arcade games. Yeah, you're all hilarious. You really are. Right, anyway, enough of my bollocks. Let's I'll just remove that from studio, and let's find share. Right, so yeah, this is the computer program, and it's episode 1. Now this came out early, don't know exactly when it is. It came out early 1980, something like that, 82, 83, something like that. Right, I'm going to stop talking and share the video now. Hopefully the volume will be okay. There's not very much there's not very much I can really do to change the volume. Right, there we go. So this is the computer program. Yeah, let's go. Episode 1. Oh, there's Roy Kinnear.
Good morning, sir.
Oh, good morning. I'd like to buy a computer.
Certainly, sir. What did you have in mind?
Well, I don't know very much about computers. Perhaps you could give me some advice.
Yeah. Well, there's the apple, the acorn, the pear.
Banana?
Yes, we have no bananas.
Oh.
We do have tangerines.
What's all this greengrocery got to do with computers?
Well, sir, you know what it says in the Bible? Be fruitful and multiply.
I really wanted something electronic.
Disc or cassette, sir?
No, not hi-fi.
You know, you'd be happy with a pet.
I had really set my heart on a computer.
You want to try watching the new TV series, sir? The computer program. There's even a computer that goes with it.
Oh, that's very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Have you got one in blue?
You don't know much about computers, do you, sir?
No, but I know what I like.
Well, the world of computers can seem a very unfriendly jungle to the uninitiated, but it doesn't have to be like that. During the course of this series, one of the things I should be doing is finding out what ordinary people, non-experts like you and I, need to know about what they call information technology. One thing I know already, the computer revolution isn't happening tomorrow. It's happening now.
That music, I mean, Micro Live came out after this, but that slicey music just takes me right back to 1982. It's amazing how much music can do that. How's the volume? Hopefully you can hear okay. There you go, that's Stonehenge. I think Dell actually helped construct that, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Colin? Is that Kraftwerk? I didn't know that.
For many centuries, man has searched for tools to help him with complex calculations. I suppose the fingers were the first. 10 of them, they're easy to use, they're portable, but they're limited in application. Recently, a theory has emerged that this was built 5,000 years ago as a complex astronomical computer to calculate the movements of the sun and the moon. It sounds hard to accept,
Oh, there's
but
Dell.
if this really was a computer, I thought it'd be interesting to compare it with one of the early large-scale computers that were around in the 50s. There's many similarities. Firstly, very few people understood how they worked. At Stonehenge, you had to be a member of a hierarchical priesthood, and it took several years before you learned the secrets. On the early computers,
I think,
you had to have a degree in mathematics before you were even allowed
Mac,
through the computer
that's
room
Mac,
door.
he died about maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Stonehenge was built, the society was mainly agricultural. Forecasting the seasons was vital. From the position of the rising sun in relation to these stones, the approach of spring and winter could be forecast. But if you wanted to reprogram Stonehenge to base the calendar on lunar cycles instead, the stones would have to be moved. It didn't take much less effort to reprogram those old, unreliable...
I actually visited Stonehenge about 10 years ago, and I was ridiculously underwhelmed. I don't know what I was expecting. I think the fact that there's no main road round it kind of takes away a wee bit of the ambience.
And no longer was it visible on enough days to justify its existence. So it was abandoned and left to what it is today, a mysterious but rather magnificent pile of old stones.
I heard that, Dale. Yeah, I saw that. That is very, very
It was
sad.
obviously important for a farming community to predict the seasons, but forecasting the weather was quite another matter. The trouble with the stones was their inflexibility.
It does get onto computers eventually, trust me.
A wide variety of applications, some of them extremely complex. For example, a prediction of weather patterns for the whole globe up to 10 days ahead can be produced in just 4 hours.
The European Weather Centre has one of the fastest and most powerful computers in the world.
You know, the weird thing is, this looks as dull as dishwater, but see to a sort of a teenager, this was like gripping TV. How can they wait to watch stuff like
this? All over the
this?
world, of temperature, pressure, humidity and so on, and process them at the rate of 50 million instructions per second. And then with a great primordial burp, out comes the weather for the next 10 days. Now, just to put that in some sort of perspective, if I were to do the same calculation, single-handed, even with the aid of a perfectly ordinary pocket calculator like that, I would need to have started well before Stonehenge was even thought of. Or to put it another way, if I gave the job to the entire population of China to share, the chances are they could do the job in 4 hours. But then, at the end of it, the chances are I wouldn't be able to collect the information even if I could speak Chinese. Now this here is the center of this colossal machine. This is the Cray. And you get the feeling in the presence of a mighty machine like that, that somewhere around the corner there lurks a high priest.
I always wondered just how powerful something like that computer would be. What would it be as powerful as, I don't know,
is to demystify computers.
Sort of modern PC now? I don't know.
For instance, that a personal computer like that, which puts computer power within the reach of everybody's pockets, it's highly advertised, is quite capable of doing the same sort of job, has the same function inside, more or less in principle, as that does. The only difference is that it does it slower. So if we wanted to use microcomputers to do the same job as that, we'd need about 1 million of them. And in fact, there are over 100 different makes of small computer now on sale in Britain.
Bloody hell, 100?
The ads and
Wow.
papers for them. Look at this one. Familiar faces make them seem the answer to the businessmen's problems.
The
You don't
good
need a
old
degree in
Commodore
electronic
PET.
wizardry to use them, it says. And this supplement has no less than 5 ads for them, and they're all of them clearly directed at the family. Look at that.
Evening
Giving
Mad
your
Moments.
child an unfair advantage at school. And there are many specialist computer magazines on the newsstands. Again, full of very tasty adverts. Inside a day, you'll be talking to it like a new friend, it says. And now they're even starting to appear in their own TV commercials.
The good old Magnavox, or the, what do you call it? The video pack. I've actually got a couple of them.
Don't despair. This series will show that the computer is within the reach of anybody, including me. And the man who'll be ably helping us with the task is Ian McNaught-Davis. Mac, you've been working with computers since Stonehenge was built, I think, haven't you?
I thought you were going to come out with that remark about it being the first silicon chip.
Is that what Stonehenge is?
Just about, yes. Well, I did program those early valve machines, which had several interesting characteristics. First, they were extremely expensive to buy. They were horrendously expensive to run. You needed a resident maintenance engineer just to keep the things going. And they were very slow compared with modern computers. Just to give you an idea...
Yeah, he just looks like that's what every kind of elderly gentleman back in the 70s 70s looked like.
Went into production at about the
70s
same
and
time
80s,
as the
actually.
first large computer was made. And if that had improved in price performance as much as the computers
Evening,
had,
Chris. How are
then
you, buddy?
we'd have had a Beetle today.
I'm
doing
well, thanks,
600
mate.
miles an hour, 30,000 miles to the gallon. It would have lasted 10,000 years without a service, and it would have cost you 50p.
Yeah, something
So
nice
you'd have
about
had
the
a
simpler times, isn't
disposable
there?
motor car. And in comparison with those early valve machines, that watch, which has got 4 games on it and tells the time, probably has as much logic in it as those very early old-fashioned valve machines.
What's the secret of it? How has it happened?
Well, strangely enough, it's this, silicon. That's what sand is made out of. It's what the silicon chip is made out of. And unlike oil, we're not going to run out of it. Every country's got some of it, and it's extremely cheap. For example, the power of this machine here, which is a fairly sizable mini computer, mainframe computer, one day will be on a chip. You'll get the same power out of a chip as you have in this mainframe computer. And that'll happen in a very few years' time.
Right. Well, even before that day comes, computers are
suitably
still doing
impressed.
some pretty staggering jobs, many of which we take for granted, and which would simply not
Right,
be
go on then, name the
possible
game.
without computer power.
I'm not sure of that one, actually. Speak and spell. Massive congratulations, Novabug, for your awesome charity stream. Really well done, mate. Good on you.
Matt,
These
what is
robots,
it that makes
you saw them all the
computers
time, didn't
so
you?
very useful to us? Is it that they're cleverer than we are?
Now, they're quite stupid in many ways, but in certain ways they are very clever. They can handle a vast amount of information, and they can handle it very rapidly. And what's more, they can keep on doing it without making any mistakes, night after night after day after night and so on, which we can't obviously do.
Right. Well, I can understand that being applied to sending a man to the moon or running the Pentagon.
the
or
VIC-20
something
there.
colossal,
Absolutely,
endless
Colin.
computations. But for
You
an
can always
ordinary
tell it with
person who just maybe wants to run a
the
small
function
business or
keys were
something,
yellow.
it's very confusing. We read ads in the paper. You could spend anything from £50 to £5,000 on a computer. But what use could I get from it?
Well, of course, many of these are set up to show games. This one here, for example, and you can play silly games on them.
Silly
There's a very
games,
important
eh?
educational element of learning how to program these computers. First of all, it's
Who
fun.
knew?
People enjoy it. And secondly, it's very creative. You can do very interesting and exciting things. It's boundless, the sort of things that you can actually use your creative imagination to do. And thirdly, it might turn out to be useful for your business. And there's no business that I can imagine that at some time or other won't find the use for a computer.
Right. Now, supposing I wanted to use a computer for my business. I'm a freelance journalist. I mean, let's take my example as maybe a typical one. What gear do I need? Because there's a terrifically wide range of choice.
Well, of course, you need the computer with a keyboard,
Yes.
something like this. You'd need a video screen. You'd need a straightforward cassette recorder to store your programs on as much as anything. Right. Obviously, you need a
the
printer
1540, yeah.
printing out your letters. And if this was a bit slow, the cassette recorder is a bit slow, you can buy yourself
don't
a
forget,
disc
Sir
unit,
Clive
which is a lot
Sinclair, he
faster,
didn't want
and
people
that
to play
stores
games
it on a disc
on his
instead of
computers.
on the ordinary magnetic cassette. And that's the equipment you'd need.
Well, business, as Max said, and particularly small business, is the fastest growing area to which personal or microcomputers are being applied. Now, our reporter, Jill Neville, has been finding out just how small some of those businesses are.
Buying sweets or chocolates
chocolate
always
peanuts.
requires serious study. There's so many different sorts to choose from.
Wafer, remember these? I think the only time I saw them for sale, they were always in the London Underground machines.
Something there at sixpence.
Because there are so many varieties on the shelves, the shopkeeper must do an awful lot of bookkeeping, both to check the stores and to keep up the orders to all the suppliers.
Absolutely.
In addition, Phyllis Arundel wanted to know more frequently than her accountant could tell her.
Yeah,
her
wafer
precise
bars were like
financial position.
they were like the
She'd
Diet
seen
Coke
microcomputers
of
advertised and
Kit
decided
Kats,
that
or the
she too
cheapo
must
version.
have
They were
one.
horrible, I think.
But not all sweet shop owners have a computer. Once you actually had the computer here and you had that keyboard and the blank screen facing you, weren't you rather apprehensive? You knew what to do already, did you?
Well, I mean, it looked like a typewriter, didn't it? And I could operate a typewriter, and I was fascinated by the little bits that came up on the screen in front of me, and having a printer and able to press another button, and it came out on the printer at the side. It was great fun.
Has it actually helped you in your business, do you think?
Well, it hasn't financially helped. It hasn't brought in more custom, which is what
But
I
they have
need.
got a much
But what it
higher
has done,
scoring Space Invaders.
It's given me a lot more time. I mean, the jobs that took ages, you know.
My husband
manually,
can watch porn.
Now it's done in seconds.
To keep up to date with her
Sugar
40
almonds,
sweet
that was my
supplies,
mum's.
VAT
That was
and
my
the
mum's
bank
favourite.
used to take Phyllis Arundel several hours bookwork every
Terry's
night.
Neapolitans.
That's the last thing you need after 10 hours on your feet.
It's not what Bug said. There's something really, really nice about these old
Now, at
programs.
the end
It's
of each
just
day,
everything
it's
was a
simply
lot
matter
simpler
of checking the day's takings
than it is
and entering
nowadays.
them and the invoices into the computer. Once a week, she also enters details of any transactions with the bank, and the computer will then give her an
Yep, the good old
up-to-date
days when it was
statement
actually
of her
sweetie
current
cigarettes
financial
rather than
position.
candy sticks, as they're now called. What the hell is all that about?
What do I do next?
The Commodore PET, bloody hell, she must have a few quid.
Because she'd found it so useful, Phyllis thought that a computer might help other people with small
There's a lot of
businesses.
copied games.
So a year ago, she started up a computer service to take over
Copying
their
games for
paperwork,
children.
allowing them to get on with their jobs.
Do you think the computer side of your business ever taking over from the chocolates?
I hope so. Yes, it'd be great fun, because at the present time, the chocolate, this business is sort of going down.
Sure, once
because
our
we've
piracy
got a new
business kicks
bypass
off,
and
she can
it's,
close the shop.
Affected trade, and in any case, I find that more exciting. I find the computer business much more exciting.
And PET did have a nice, kind of
Matt, have
clunky,
I
kind
got
of
to be
clicky
able
keyboard.
to program a microcomputer in order to get some value from it?
Not necessarily. You
They
can
still sell juicy fruit,
buy
by the
a
way. I used to
magazine,
love
for
that.
example, and get program listings. I love this one with the bug-eyed monster and the lights coming out of its eyes. And in here,
I think
they
that's,
publish all manner of different sorts of programs.
That's the very, very first
And
I was going to say episode. That
And
was
you
the
have-
very
what do you do? You
first
type
issue
all
of
that
computer video
into
games, I
the
think.
computer?
You type it all in without one mistake, and one mistake will ensure that it will never work.
Right, well, that's pretty laborious business, isn't it?
Well, you can buy it, of course, on a cassette.
Yeah.
Just an ordinary household cassette like this.
That's just a perfectly ordinary domestic cassette, and
Yes.
presumably that's the same in principle as the proper big computer has, like James Bond films, has big tapes rolling backwards and forwards. It's the
Even
same
Ford
sort of thing.
Transit Van,
That's
like
exactly
the
the
name.
same. Well, in
And
principle, it's the same.
Divan
That's running about
Shalfie.
250
Thanks for
times
tuning
the
in,
speed
guys.
of that, and they can run up to
Always nice to
8,000
see some
times
new
the speed
people
of
in the
that.
stream.
Things in computers don't happen 10 times or twice as fast. It's always 100 times or 1,000 times as fast.
But for our purposes, this is perfectly good.
We have a program in there, and we can put it into the machine.
Well, let's do it. Right, so far so good. There's a perfectly ordinary domestic cassette recorder.
Exactly.
Okay, connected to this. Now, what happens next?
Well, we have to load the program into the machine. So you type load.
LOAD.
Now we've got to give it the name of the program. So in
Even
this
an ox,
particular
how are you, mate?
machine, we have to use quotation marks to
Right.
give it the name. So quotation marks, and the name of the game is
I actually had one of these. Is it Cub monitors? I think they were great,
War Game.
great
Right.
monitors,
Now,
but they're
we'll switch
bloody.
on
They're
the cassette.
built like tanks, and they're extremely
and then
heavy.
Return, and that puts the control back to the computer. And now it's beginning to search.
Right. Now, presumably, as you said, this is a fairly slow and laborious way of doing it, and we could speed things up by using one of the floppy disks you were talking about earlier.
Yes, on a floppy, this is about 130 times the speed of that, and of course it costs correspondingly more.
So
But-
this takes minutes and that takes seconds.
yeah, it'll take half a minute, so that would take being in flash, no time at all.
Now,
But
how do
we're
we know
ready.
it's finished?
Well, we've got the symbol back here, and that shows the computer's waiting for you to do your next thing.
So that's in there.
That's it. So we can switch it
stop
off.
that. And presumably we can check, can we, that what was on there is in there now.
Happily, yes. All you have to do is to type out list and it'll tell you what's in it.
List, L-I-S-T.
L-I-S-T.
He's not very good at spelling, is there, Chris? Is he? Bloody hell!
Okay, that's
And
the
that is
program that was.
exactly what it's read in from that cassette.
Right, right. Okay, well, we know it's in there. How do we play the game?
Just tell it to run.
Run. Nice, simple English words, I must say. And return, I suppose.
That's it. And you should be in the game. It works.
Right.
There you
Okay,
go, some
who's the
stupid
back?
breakout
Left with the
game.
Z key, right with the X key, try to knock all the bricks out with the ball. Bricks to the further back score more points. There are like 3 balls, large or small, bat. Well, I have an L bat. As a beginner. Press any key to serve. Right. Nice multicoloured game, that. I see. Yes, right. I think I get the picture.
I hope you're better at tennis than you are at this.
Give the guy a break. He's played it for about half a second. Jesus. It's not a bad little game for a bloody
obviously it's
typing.
not just for playing games. They're terrific fun, but there must be more to it than that.
I really hate to see computers just used for playing games. To my mind, it's kind of degrading when they could be used for much more serious purposes. And of course, there are millions of uses for them.
Degrading, seriously.
Series. For example, you can actually use this to communicate with much larger scale computers.
If only Mac knew what to use computers
for. Communicate with other people who own micros, and you could use it to communicate with databases.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going to show you right now.
All right.
And we're going to access a database, and we do this by typing star Prestel. So it's star Prestel. Prestel. We're now dialing Prestel automatically through the ordinary telephone.
Yeah, or a download
Enormous
would be like 60 gig on a PlayStation.
Share price to weather forecasts and so on.
And key something or other to continue.
That's the old hash up there, which is a shift and a hash.
Called hash, is it? Wonderful.
What would you like to do?
Well, we thought about this before the programme started, and I decided I want to fly to
You
Paris.
born...
Oh, what a shame. Well, there we go. Travel. And number 2.
Okay.
2. And Presto.
Presto. I've never heard of that airline, but I'll take a chance.
Oh, we don't want to
Sound
book a real
friendly.
ticket on one of the others.
I see. Now, we're going to Paris, so presumably...
Yeah, one of my mates, he had a
one in there,
BBC,
and
he had
if
a
that's where the
Prestel
little flashing
account.
thing is, that's
I
where it's
remember
going.
letting me
All
see
right.
it work. It was
And a hash.
quite a kind of dry thing. There wasn't much interesting.
Economy. 1. Hash. Getting the hang of this. Date of travel, the 11th of January.
That's 11:01. Oh,
Just like that.
yep, that's it.
Well, here goes. I hope it works. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Now, I hope you've got a seat for me on the 6:30 flight to Paris this evening.
Right, sir. Can I have your name, please?
Sel, S-E-R-L-E.
What? Don't you know who I am? The screen's not even turned
Yes,
on.
sir,
You notice
the
that what it is,
316
actually.
at 18:30. How would you like to pay?
By credit
Oh, it's
card.
okay. The BBC will take care of things.
The fare is £64.
Wonderful. Really well.
64 quid. Bloody hell, that's a lot.
This flight is now boarding at gate 25.
Well, obviously Heathrow is computer land, and planes now fly with so many passengers.
And full of these
Colossal
pesky
distances,
arcade games as well, no
enormous
less.
speeds. Airlines depend now completely on computers, because the only way they can sell tickets reasonably cheaply is by having full planes. And the other luxury of this colossal computer network is that I can cancel at any time I feel like it, right up till 5 minutes before the flight closes. And anybody else in the country or in the world can have the same seat on the same plane. What's more, without computers, the chances are this ticket to Paris could cost as much as £1,000.
Evening, Matt. How are you, mate?
But before we get carried away with enthusiasm for these miracles of technology, perhaps we should consider a more objective view. Author and journalist Rex Malik has been observing and writing about the computer world for more than 20 years. And where does he think it's leading us?
It's leading us to major change. Some would say as unprecedented change has occurred during the First Industrial Revolution.
During
Now, if
the
you don't
war.
understand the nature of that change, you'd better understand something of the nature of the technology which fuels it. In this program, they've shown you the Cray 1, the Weather Center computer, a supercomputer. Yet, in comparison to what's to come, that isn't even the equivalent of a Model T Ford. The Japanese have just started a program to build a computer 100 times as powerful. That program, they say, will take about 10 years. Okay, so it slips, say 20. That means very simply that at the end of 20 years, almost everybody will have one, or access to one. Now why? Well, because it's going to be made out of microelectronics. And it's in the nature of microelectronics that 90% of your costs come up
Gotta
front.
figure out exactly what
i.e.
nationality
costs
that
you
guy is.
90% of the total to build the first one. Thereafter, you can show
Yeah, I'm
them
well,
out
thanks,
IPs.
Matt. Not long back to
So
London, actually. I
everybody
was
has one.
in London,
That means that a
went down
15-year-old
middle of
at
last
school
week and
today,
came back
by the time he's
yesterday.
35 to 45, is going to have almost unbelievable brain and memory power added to aid him in his work. And there's another question. What people are going to use it for? Well, in fact, you're going to find that most of the time, that computer's going to sit there idle. It's going to be parked, just like the cars, parked at the curb. Sometimes it'll go to top speed, but very seldom. Now, the question now becomes, it's not that do computers have social consequences? It is, what are the social consequences of computers? What are the issues that are raised? And remember, we're talking about a computer of 100 times the most powerful computer on the planet, and yet it's essentially built out of the very same technology that Chris booked his holiday on.
God, these programs are dry, aren't they? And there you go, that is episode 1. Do you want to watch another episode? What do you think? Yeah, I think we'll go for one more. If you want to, of course. It's got to be worth it just for that music alone, though. Oh, cheers, Matt. Right. Okay. Let me just try and find it. Computer program number 2. There we go. Copy here. Bink. Right, okay, let's look for number 2, remove, and we want to share a video. Right, this is a computer program, episode 2.
Now, that's a drip dry shirt.
Riveting stuff, look at that.
And that's half a spin symbol and program E. Now, if you've used a modern washing machine, you'll know what a program is. The program consists of a preset sequence of jobs. Water in, powder in, wash, rinse, spin, and so on. You don't need to worry about it. Now, the steps a computer goes through may seem a lot more mysterious, but it's still a matter of just one thing after another.
Worth it just for this intro. I don't actually recall them saying it, given the credit in the music Kraftwerk. Maybe I missed it, I don't know.
When Vauxhall want to make a new car, first of all they have the concept, then they design it, and of course then they're faced with the problem of building it. Ideally what they would like...
Good old days before health and safety, that guy's hasn't got a bloody crash helmet or anything on.
So on
Hard hat.
and out pops a car at the other end. Unfortunately, that's not really possible. So what they have is a production line, where a set of components are brought in under the control of a set of instructions to produce a particular car.
Look at that, not a set of safety goggles in sight. Fantastic. Oh, he's got a set of...
Exactly
he's got his beats on, either that or it's hopefully it's a set of earmuffs or ear defenders.
Set of instructions to solve a particular problem.
I'm getting it laldy. You're not wrong, Del, yeah.
Well, just as you may want to test a sequence of instructions in a computer program to
I want a
find out if
jacket
they're
like
correct,
Mac.
so the instructions on the production line
Suede
are checked.
jacket.
If car leaks, then fix it and take it back. If it doesn't leak, then continue to the next instruction.
He's got a pair of jeans on, not a pair of bloody PPM inside. Look at him, he's got a bloody jumper on, Jesus.
The order of the instructions, of course, is very important. Fit front-wheel drive unit in a front-wheel drive car must come before fit engine. Well, if the components are all okay and the instructions are all correct, there's one way of checking out the whole program, and that's to test the final product. And in this case, it's pretty simple. It worked.
The word program is a well-chosen one for computers. I mean, there's nothing new about the word. What it usually means is an ordered series of events at anything from an orchestral concert to a village festival. Now, to use the word for a series of instructions isn't a very big jump. But when we talk about programming computers, the word suddenly seems to take on a rather different meaning. I mean, if you think about a concert program, the list is just made up of pieces of music to play. And what you won't see is that after the interval, the London Philharmonic Orchestra will hold a bout of all-in wrestling. And even by changing the instructions, a motor car assembly line won't suddenly start turning out pottery. But a computer seems to be able to do just about anything. I mean, it can play music.
Yeah, chocolate brown was very, very en vogue, I think, back then.
Give you your own personal telephone directory if you wanted to. It can even draw pictures. Now, Ian McNaught-Davis, how does one machine manage to do all those different jobs?
Well, very much as your washing machine was processing your clothes, what this is doing is processing information. The information is like your clothes. It moves information around. And all it is doing to produce different things like this, it sends information to this screen, which gives it a different color, or it would send a signal to the loudspeaker here to give different tones on the music, or it could send information out to a cassette recorder like this. And all it needs to do this is a sequence of instructions. They're relatively simple and broken down. They can move information about. They can add one number to another. And, of course, the secret of a computer...
As I said earlier on, I mean, watching this now, it does look as dry as dishwater. But, you know, to a teenager growing up in the 80s, when computers were kind of first becoming a thing, I couldn't get enough of stuff like this. It didn't matter the fact that they were talking about bullshit like this. It was awesome. It was absolutely, you know, you just had to watch it. I loved all this kind of stuff.
A pattern like this isn't exactly
I don't remember seeing this back in the day. It was Micro Live,
which
did come out later on.
To carry out a complicated process like this one.
Well,
you're not wrong, Mr. T-Bone,
sorting
yeah.
a stack of weights into order requires it to be broken down very simply for a computer. You sort the weights.
What, in weight order?
That's right. Heaviest on the right.
There's no effort in this, I don't think. No, there isn't. No.
No, that didn't stretch your credibility very much.
Not really, yeah.
Straight. Right. Bring them back in the order.
How would a computer do it?
What you do, start at the right-hand end.
You're bang on country road, stuff like this.
So
It's
the
awesome.
right hand is lighter
Even
than
now,
the one on the
you know,
left.
I just
Swap.
love watching
Right,
it. As Novabug said earlier on, it's just, it's when times were simpler. Now we live in a society where everything's so
already on the first
complicated and what
class,
have you.
right,
There's
it's
something
not
really
the
nice
same.
All
about
the way back to the beginning.
stuff like this.
That's correct. That's wrong. Swap.
We've done those. Those are okay.
Those are correct. Right. And that looks about right to me. And that's how a computer would do it.
That's exactly how a computer, because the instructions are very simple. You know, if your right hand is lighter, swap and go on to the next pair. It's a very simple piece of code for a computer to understand. And of course it does it extremely quickly.
Now, is
Much
there
more
a
rapidly.
real life application of
Yes,
this?
there is, and I can show you that. We've got a little program here, sort. It's out of alphabetic sequence. And we're going
you're
to
not
sort
wrong,
them
Dale.
into alphabetic order. And every time they're out of alphabetic order, we change them round.
And it's doing it by just comparing two at a time. That's all it can manage at one time. And
That's
it's
right.
seeing each pair, if one is higher up in the alphabet than the other,
Swaps
them
them
round.
over. Of course, we've slowed this down many thousands of times so we can see what exactly is going on. Of course, a computer is normally sorting millions or hundreds of thousands of items, and of course it goes
You've got to
a lot
love the
faster
hairstyles
than
of the
that.
What we
80s.
were looking at there, yes, was an artificially simulated, slowed-down version of what really happens. How fast
Mine
does
was
it go?
Well,
more
that one will slow down
Tricera, I think,
thousands of
than
times. It can give you an
the
idea
Mac.
of how fast it goes. It
Oh,
is.
yes. I mean, it's less than a second.
And it's extremely quick, and that's the real whole point of a computer, taking very, very simple instructions, but being able to do them incredibly quickly. It seems laborious for a human being, for a computer. It's very simple.
Right.
In its own way, a computer goes about its job just like a very finely tuned piece of machinery.
A leaked docking computer.
In a beautiful piece of machinery like this, the individual parts, the wheels, the levers, the gears, the cranks, are all quite easy to understand in themselves.
Yeah, I think good old evening, Trev. How are you, mate? Good old Mac would have a heart attack if he knew what computers became. Grand Theft Auto and God knows what else. Pum, 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 pum.
The violano works from music on a roll of paper punched with holes. It's a simple way of storing information. But it wasn't the first machine to use this
I never
system.
realised that, Colin.
To trace the beginnings of punch paper or cards, we have to go a lot further back in history and look at a more down-to-earth device. Well, I think after a few 12-hour shifts, I'd really get to know how to operate this machine. It's the famous Jacquard loom, and even though it was invented nearly
It's so famous, I've never heard of
the
it.
principles in it are still in use in modern computers today. Using this machine, it's possible to produce any pattern that
He's
you
taking
like.
it seriously. He's got his jacket off. Look at that. He's even got his top button
All it means
undone.
is that a different combination of these warp threads have to be lifted every time the shuttle goes across, and we gradually progress down through the cloth. Well, one way of doing it, of lifting these different combinations, was to have a small boy sat at the top of the loom.
A
and every
small
time the
boy? You
shuttle
can't
went
say
across,
that, for
he would
Christ's
pull up
sake.
a different combination of these threads. Of course, that was fairly laborious and subject to errors, but it did work and was used. But that's where Jacquard made his breakthrough. He devised one method of getting information into this machine which would do exactly that job. And that information was stored on these punch cards. It was, in essence, a very simple idea. Where there was a hole, a thread would be lifted. Where there was no hole, it wouldn't be lifted. So each time a card went through, a different combination of threads would be lifted and the pattern created.
I get the feeling that only guys of our age that were there at the very, very start would actually enjoy stuff like this. I think this should just be a wee bit too kind of dry and serious for other people. Maybe I'm talking complete bollocks. I don't know. I love stuff like this. So.
Weaving is just one example of a binary or two-way system. Now, the point with weaving is that each warp thread can be either up or down. But with even such a limited choice for each thread, the number of patterns which can be made is almost infinite. Let me show you how it works. With one warp thread, either up or down, the weft thread crossing it can either go under or over it. Two possible routes. With two warp threads, the weft can go one of four different ways. Under both, under one and over the other, over the first one and under the other, or over both. Every time you add a warp thread, the number of possible combinations doubles, so that with 8 threads, and we've had to lay them out in 4 columns because the possibilities are so many, the weft actually has a choice of 256 possible routes across them. and this will progressively draw them in. Now, Mac, isn't that basically how a computer works?
Well, instead of threads, of course, they're electrical ons or offs. I quite like to think of them as pots, which either have electricity in them or are empty, rather like these jars on this shelf, some of which have things in them, some of which are empty. And in this particular computer, they're grouped in 8s, so you can get the 256 combinations.
And each combination represents what, a different number?
Well, a number or a special symbol or an alphabetic character or even a command. For example, this one, empty, empty, full, empty, 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 represents a left bracket. And this one, we think of them as 00110110, represents number 6.
Yeah, I did my old grade in computers.
It could be just the letter A, or it could be a command.
Did a bit of programming in the BBC.
To add 2 numbers together.
Right, and an ordinary personal computer like this one would use all 256 of those?
Yes, all 256.
Right. Well, giving commands in the form of binary patterns is actually surprisingly something quite familiar to us, as our reporter Jill Neville has been finding out.
As you slow down,
There's Del Boy's,
it's probably never
not
crossed
Del
your
Boy in the
mind
stream, Del Boy Trotters van.
It's obeying an instruction in binary code.
Where's that about? That's London, is it? Oh, nice glasses.
Why should you have done? You've probably thought of them as a simple colour code. Red means stop, green means go, and so on. But there's another way of looking at traffic lights.
They're still all very posh though, weren't they?
Understand the signals, even if you're completely colourblind. Each of the lights has a definite position and can be either on or off. And according to the different combinations of on and offs, so the meaning changes.
The 3 lights can be combined in 8 different ways, but of those combinations, only 4 mean anything to drivers. If the top light's on, you stop.
Unless you're a BMW driver,
if the top
obviously.
2 lights are on, you get ready to go, and when the bottom one's on, you go. And the cycle continues, with the middle light meaning prepare to stop when the top light shows again.
Computers also work in binaries, so not surprisingly, they can be used to
That was a quick
control
jump
whole
cut.
networks of traffic lights. As unlikely as it may seem as you struggle through the traffic, all these traffic lights on every street corner are precisely synchronized to get the majority of cars to their destinations as quickly as possible. And if things
We try to
seem
leg it
bad,
across the road before
well,
they get his
a
run
lot
down.
worse without that computer in control.
In London, the traffic light system's controlled from New Scotland Yard.
Funny, Novabug's talking about the glass teacup saucers. I always remember as a kid, I used to go to my pal's house and she always gave you a cup of tea with, even though I never took sugar, she always gave you a cup of tea with sugar in it, and it was always in a see-through glass cup. Don't think I've seen them since the 80s. Or the 70s, actually.
To the off-peak at about 10 o'clock, and then the evening peak at 3 o'clock, and so on, right through the 24 hours of the day.
From his position at the console, the operator can change the pre-programmed sequences of lights to speed the flow. If there's a heavy build-up of traffic, he can switch the computer to a contingency plan.
Look, you see, he's playing Super Pipeline, look at that.
The plan which is put in for this time of day isn't sufficient for that, so I could put in a contingency which would increase the eastbound flow. In this case, it's Group 8, which controls the whole of the east side of Houston Road. By putting in the maximum eastbound plan, which gives it 7 or 8 seconds on all the eastbound junctions, it should clear that backlog.
Altering the sequence at any one set of traffic lights has a marked effect on all the roads radiating from it, and the timing of the other lights in the area has to be adjusted accordingly. It takes a computer to cope with a problem of such complexity and keep the traffic moving.
Obviously, keeping London.
I was actually, when I was down in London last week, I went into the Amazon shop, and you don't actually, there's only one person working in the place. You just basically pick up what you want and then you sod off.
They can only do a relatively limited number of things, and in fact the instructions can only be put together in a limited number of ways, in fact only 3 ways. They can be executed or followed in a sequence, just done one after the other from beginning to end, Or you can execute a sequence of instructions and do it again and again a certain number of times. And then the exciting bit, which makes a computer seem to have some sort of intelligence, it can test whether a condition is true or false, and as a result of that test, it can do either one set of instructions or a different set of instructions.
Beginning to sound a little bit like cooking, in that there only are a very limited number of processes you can inflict.
Did I not
on
mention that,
set
Dale?
of ingredients. You can boil, bake,
Cheeky
or
sod.
roast, or fry them. And a limited number of ingredients you can do it with, of course. But by combining the instructions in different ways, there's no limit to the number of dishes you can make. Take making mayonnaise, for example.
Because I never realised just how uncomputerised these programs, early programs were.
Then you put the egg yolk in the bowl, add salt, pepper, and a little vinegar, and mix them all together.
And those instructions are simply stepped through one at a time.
Then you drip the oil into the egg, a drop at a time, and whisk the mixture.
Yeah, get down there at some point,
Now you're
Chris. I
performing
was
that
down
group
in.
of
I
processes over
was
and
down
over
in
again.
Devon. When was
Drip,
it?
whisk,
Last.
look at the oil.
Oh,
Drip,
was
whisk,
it November,
look at the oil.
October, I think it was.
Until the oil is finished.
I drove down, which was a hell of a long way.
If the
that
mayonnaise curdles, you put in another egg yolk and go back to dripping in
nice
oil
part of the
again.
country, mate.
And those instructions are only to be performed if it curdles. Otherwise, the mayonnaise is finished. And you can eat it.
That's fine when the instructions are about cooking. But what about the instructions on a computer?
Well, this is a program we have stored in the machine. In other words, it's a list of instructions.
This has been pre-done. This is what we
Pre-done,
did.
yes,
Okay.
just a couple of
What's
lines.
going on with the lines? What the hell's that all
There's
about?
a list of instructions that will tell the machine.
Yeah, it
what
was.
to do. And
It
you'll
was
see that
about
numbered,
600
so it tells
miles
the
in
machine
total.
which order to do them. It could have been 1 and 2, but you
Yes,
usually
special
number them
sauce.
10, 20, because you might miss one out, forget a line, you want to slip a line in there.
It's
after.
easy to
You
take the
can say
piss out
11,
of programs
12,
like this, but you
14,
know what?
yeah.
It was. I
The
still
first
love
one
them. I think they're brilliant.
is print. And inverted commas. It's like, I always think of it like a conversation in a book. If you put something in inverted commas, it means it's conversation. So that tells the computer to actually print.
I will be
where
going
is the
down to
Vatican question
Nerg,
mark on the
which
screen when you
is
run it.
So when you
in
run the
Newcastle
program, that's what you get.
in
That's all you
July, I
get
think it is.
Where's
Where's
the
the
Vatican?
Vatican? For that one line, that's
Okay,
right.
yeah.
So that's fairly straightforward. Print will always do that. It will print on the screen whatever you put inside these quotation marks. And that's basic. That's the language that we're using on this particular computer.
Okay, what about the second line? I don't
Well-
understand at all.
That's much more complicated. Again, that's a basic command, input. And what it's saying is, I'm asking you to input something into the computer. It's quite
Evening,
simple,
Will.
just
How are
put
you,
it
mate?
on this keyboard.
So that's the
Of a
computer
legend,
talking to
mate,
me.
if you don't mind me saying
Effectively,
so.
it will do. I'll show you how it runs in a minute.
All right.
Now, when you input something,
I was
it needs
talking to one of
know
your
where to
ex-colleagues,
locate it in its
Mr.
memory. And
Gary
we're calling
Bracey,
this here city
last week.
string, which means it's expecting you to input some alphabetic characters. Where's the Vatican? It's going to be a word you're
That's
going
what
to put
that
in.
dollar sign means.
And that's what that curious little nasty
And again,
dollar
that's
sign.
something that's part of this basic language.
That's
rather
right,
than-
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So if we can run that, and we can get the computer to actually run through those two instructions
What do I
and
do?
try it out. So you just
I think I've
type
lost
run.
count the
You
number
type
of times
run,
I've watched
yes,
these
that's what we
programs.
do.
I think they're brilliant. Can't get
and
enough of them.
return. So there it is. Where's the Vatican?
Yeah.
And it gives you a little question mark saying, what are you going to put in? So it's
Yeah, it
expecting
was
you now
last.
to
Was it
put in
last
a
week?
word.
No, it was the week before,
Now,
actually,
I
Bill.
don't think we should do
Yeah.
that just yet, because I'd like to look at the programme.
If you ever fancy coming onto my
Look at it a
channel
bit
for a
further. So
for
we
a
should
blather,
escape from the
you're
programme.
always
We'll
more
key
than
here,
welcome.
it's like escape from Stalag, whatever it is, and bang.
Yeah.
And that gives the escape from where we were, which was line 20.
Right, so we've interrupted the
We've interrupted the program. Now I think we should list it, and we can just another.
Why have they
basic
got a
command is
gigantic,
to type list,
cassette?
which will list the program for us.
Tape cassette behind them. What's that all about?
Return again. And that's the whole program, the first two. And on line 30, we've put the sort of statement we did at the end of the Mayo sequence, which was, if the Mayo's okay, eat it. If it isn't, start again and put some more egg yolk in. This one, it said, if what you've typed in is not equal, that's horrid sign means not equal to Rome, then print wrong.
Okay.
So, Bill, yeah, I'll get in touch.
When you run the program, you're going to get the
I'll just trying to think the best way to do that.
And then you're going to get a question.
I'll get in touch anyway, buddy. Are you on Facebook by any chance?
An answer which isn't the correct answer, which isn't Rome, then it'll say wrong.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. So we can write a line. Would you like to write another line to say? I think we could put in a line.
Let's try and look enthusiastic, Chris, for Christ's sake.
No, I've got
if
to
it
type
does
a
equal
number,
Rome.
haven't I?
Yes.
40, I guess.
You could type any number as long as it's bigger than 30.
Mac is a cock.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you test this out. You're going to have to work this one out.
There you go. See if it's right or wrong.
Presumably you have to say if this funny business. If city
Good stuff, Bill. Listen, I'll
dollar
look out for you. I'll send you a
is
friend request,
Rome, then
and we'll get in
correct,
touch. That would be
or-
fantastic.
Right,
Look forward to that, buddy.
Except instead of is, type equals.
Okay.
You know what? I tried. I actually did a bit of a search. I'd love to get Fred Harris on the channel. I think he'd be brilliant.
Equals.
Talk about Play School, obviously, but yeah, I don't know what he's still doing. I think he's still alive. I hope he is at least.
End quotation marks. Then.
I was gutted to hear about David Ward passing away last week. That was very, very sad. Then print Mac is a cock.
Okay. And
there we go.
Now what?
Let's see if it works.
Cheers, Chris. Thanks for dropping in, buddy. Take care, man.
On again.
Where is the Vatican? London. What do I do now? I mean, it hasn't responded.
Return. Always after the line.
Wrong. Well,
that works.
That works, all right.
Run it again.
Let's try the right answer.
Yeah, when I was talking to Gary, I did ask how John Woods and
it was a very simple little
and
program,
David were,
It gives
and
you
he
that
did
warm
say that
feeling of
David
having
wasn't
done
well.
something and understood something.
And when I
Absolutely.
said I
And it
hope
is
he
the
gets
basis
better,
of many
he did
programs.
say I don't think so.
If
So yeah,
then
very sad.
instruction is the real thing that separates a computer from a straightforward calculator. It can make little decisions within itself.
I can also understand your feelings when you talk about the sense of gratification and the pleasure, even from a very simple thing like that. You know, it's a very good feeling when it goes right, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Yeah. So even at this simple level, the computer can be made to do something that seems...
Whose idea was it to
almost
hang
intelligent.
kitchen utensils at
course,
the
I
back
know
of a
that
computer
is a
program?
but a school child might not. A series of questions from the computer, programmed in precisely the same way, could make an interesting and educational quiz.
There we go. Right, look at that guy pretending to program. Right, it's 10:30. Have we got time for one more? What do you think? Who wants one more? Or have had enough? Is two enough? What do you think? First one to say, yep, let's get another one on. We'll go for it. I'm going to copy it across anyway. What do you think? Yeah, let's one more, and then we'll call it a night. Let me just find it. Retro programs, computer program, series 1 and episode 3. Copy there. Right, I need to make a quick phone call, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute my mic and cheers, Jambone. Take care, buddy. Yeah, I'll get it playing and then I'll make a quick phone call. Share video file. There we go.
180. Go to 30 and run. I suppose the most daunting thing about computers is this business of communicating with them. There's the machine, and I'm supposed to talk to it. I say talk, but it's more a matter of writing it little notes. You type little memos into it. Of course, there are a large number of what computer people call languages, but they don't seem much like any language we humans speak. In fact, you can never forget that you're talking to a machine.
plane a bit there, then.
Years ago, these steam engines and agricultural machines were in common everyday use. Today, they just beautifully preserve collector's items. Just as they make people redundant, they in their turn were replaced. But even so, outdated as they are, we can still see at work in them the same principles on which much of today's computer technology is based. They're not really steam organs at all. It was the steam engine which drove the generator, which powered the pump, which produced the air, which made the music. Absolutely magic. Brilliant. You know, if I could get it in my living room, I'd get rid of my hi-fi. You know, this was designed to replace a 60-piece orchestra. It would churn out music 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It would churn it out in any style you wanted or any tune you wanted, providing you knew how to program it. And this was the secret. A pattern of holes in a piece of cardboard. And it's the placing of these holes in their exact positions which ensures the organ plays this piece and not the national anthem. Well, tell us, Tim, how does it work?
Well, I'll try to. We have a row of steam
Right, what have I
engines
missed?
here.
Al calling his sex line. I'll tell my girlfriend in
When the
Newdale.
key is up, it operates an air valve inside the box here, which transmits an air signal through the tubes.
Oh, do you remember jackets with patches?
Would you like to see how these work? Then? Yeah.
You want to look at my organ,
If I
Mac?
put this book on here, there's the drum slot there. See number that one there, 55. If I push this down now, and you move that up and down like that.
Can you imagine somebody whose introduction to computers was like the PlayStation 3 looking at something like this?
Very simply,
It's
it's
just
a sort of an early form of
unimaginable.
binary, just a straight on-off switch.
That's all it is. Yes.
Very, very simple.
When the key is up, the music plays. Simple as that.
I really like it.
These are fantastic, these organs.
Music of a very different kind from the annex of the Science Museum, the bit the public never see. It's an absolute treasure house of redundant technology. What have you found, Mac?
It's a Japanese kamikaze rocket. I suppose it's the sort of executive jet they give to redundant Japanese executives.
Well, look, this has got flashing lights and it's got Ferranti written on it, so I guess it must be a computer, is that right?
Yeah, it's a bit of an oldie, but it's still a computer.
Now, it's making music. Does that
Ferranti,
mean that
bloody
there's
hell.
any similarity between the way this makes music and the way those steam organs in Blandford Forum do it?
Curiously enough, there is, and I can show you it. It's a little bit surprising. If you look at this little
I'll be
device,
dusting
you remember
underneath
the
it,
cards with
Dale,
all
will you?
those holes cut in it. As there were holes in the board on those boards that went through the old steam organ, these represent the holes, these little plugs. They're actually ferrite plugs. And where there's a one, that's an on, and where there isn't one, that's an off. And each one of these running right across represents instructions. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Each one of these, there's 24 across here, 24 on-offs, which gives you a possibility of 16 million combinations of instructions. And that's just, you can imagine it almost like that board going through the steam organ, and this is telling this computer exactly what it should do.
That seems an awfully cumbersome way of running a computer, putting little pins in holes.
Absolutely desperate. I mean, if anybody had to program like this days, there'd be no programmers left. It's impossible.
He's looking a bit more casual as our Mac. You don't no tie or anything.
Even this machine has some help to help you sort them out, but very, very little.
And this is obviously not just designed for making music, is it?
No, well, it's a general-purpose computer, but this particular one was programmed to run an ammonia plant, and it took temperature sensing devices which convert it to input to the machine. It took acidity and so on, fed it all into a series of programs, and these controlled the messages out to control the valves that ran the whole plant.
That still seems a very long way from what we think of as the modern computer with its keyboard and its television set. Are they really that different?
Well, the idea is very similar. In that Argus, there was a program running in the machine that would check whether I touched any switches on the front. And in this, there's one running as well.
There's a program in here. Well, what most people think of as a program, surely, is a set of instructions in the computer which say, do this, do that. In other words, making it do something. Well, as far as I can see, it's not doing anything. It's just sitting there.
Well, it isn't exactly switched off because you can see the little light flash, which means it's switched on. But in addition to that, there is a program running
How can you do that? How can you be inside the TV?
Whether somebody has actually pressed a key on the keyboard, and it's running all the time.
Does that mean there's a little sort of electric current running backwards and forwards saying key pressed, no, run again, key pressed, no, and like that? Is that what it's
Well,
doing?
it's not an electric current, but the idea is very similar. And I've got something I'd really like to show you, because it's very much like your doorbell at home has broken down. You're expecting friends with their arms full of good cheer. How do you know when they've arrived at the door?
Well, that's very clear. The machine is constantly looking to see if anybody's there or not, and if they're not, they go back and keep checking. Are all computers like that?
No, some actually operate more like as if you had a doorbell. In other words, as you be sitting at home, doing something else, but subconsciously listening for the bell to ring, and as soon as they rang the bell, you'd go to the door and see if anyone was there. Some programs work like that, or some computers work like that. You hit a key,
You're not
it
wrong,
interrupts
yeah.
what's going on in the computer at that time.
Now, when you press a key, I imagine a kind of electronic version of your marvellous steam organ, where, you know, a metal prong goes through there and says, circuit A, open, and now you press A. So it's been through all this process, little pipes and wires, and up comes A on the screen. Now, is that anything like accurate?
No, there is no connection at all between the screen and between the keyboard and what's appearing on the screen. And I think I can show you this. I've written a little demonstration program here, and all it does is put "I am busy" on the screen. So there's now another program running inside this computer in here. And so the program that services the keyboard is no longer running, and you can see that because if I touch the keyboard, it doesn't do anything.
Well, you're absolutely stuck now. If that's going to go on forever. I mean, how do you stop it?
Well, fortunately, we have a doorbell, or equivalent of a doorbell, and we press escape, which is the doorbell, press it, and it stops. And we're back now.
The doorbell, who knew?
That's asking the keyboard, has anybody pressed a key?
So if you press a key now, it'll come up on the screen?
It will come right on the screen.
Right. Now, what is it exactly that happens when, between the time I press that key and the letter comes up, something happens in here?
Well, it's quite complex. First of all, you hit a key, it will then store that character. There'll be a program in there that's checking whether a character's there. If it finds one, it will refer it to another program, and that in its turn will
plants.
determine
Who
where it's
remembers
going to go
rubber
on the screen,
plants were
whether it goes
massive back in the
here or
70s and
further
80s.
along, whether it's overlapped and should go on the next line.
Plants?
Quite a complex sequence of instructions it has
Remember
to
that,
go
or
through.
Max Groening's own
It's a
hash?
lot faster than I can type. It takes less than 1,000th of a second to do that.
As quickly as that?
It's very, very rapid.
So deep down in this machine's subconscious, I mean, planted there, is the message "make A" on the screen, which we just have to call up by pressing the key. Is that right?
Totally routine. It just goes on and on. And I always like to think of it as, it's very complex, the individual things, but you only have to give it one instruction. It's almost like soldiers on parade, that they individually have quite complex things to do, but you can give one command and make them all turn or halt or whatever.
And each soldier
There's a post office tower in the background there.
Being drilled to do.
Minus a
Except
cat.
that what he wants,
Or the
what he has
kitten.
to do in that sequence.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, go and Google the Googies. The Googies? The Goodies even. Do they still have that? Changing of the guard. Is that still a thing?
Just carrying the military analogy a little bit farther, if I gave you a command, shoot at a target, as a trench soldier, you'd know exactly what to do.
Right, yes. It just happens by an amazing coincidence I have a rifle here, and I think, let me just see if I know what you mean. You can divide the action of simple command, like shoot, into 3 sort of routines. It's load, aim, and fire, and all of them quite complicated. Loading means opening that, stick a bullet in there.
Jesus, Max, starting to shut myself. Look at him.
Loaded. Aiming means lining up. Yes, clear.
What the
There's
hell?
nothing in it, but let's not take any chances. Lining up the target with
Yeah,
the 2
we've all
sights in
seen
front of
the
gun, looking through
is it
it
the
and
crow?
making sure that it's all lined up. And then the firing part is another muscular activity, which is pulling the trigger finger like that. And when you're satisfied that everything's lined up properly, fire. And those are 3 quite complicated routines, all
I think
embodied
Max
in one
has
very
pissed
simple word:
himself.
shoot at the target.
In computer language, we call them subroutines, parts of a main routine. And perhaps I can show you, if you pass me this rather large book of steam organ music, you'll see something of what, what we mean. If you look carefully at this, you can find 2 pieces of this music which are very similar. There's a piece here, and there's a piece down here.
Right.
And we can think of those, they're probably just repeats of the same refrain. Well, you could take that out and take that out, and at this point you have an instruction which says play this section. You've just stored it once, and when it's played it comes back to this point on the music. We could have a command which says play refrain, and it would play the refrain here, it would play the refrain there. In other words, that was a subroutine. And by that command of saying play refrain, we've almost started to invent a computer language, even for the old steam organ.
Now, we've talked about language a lot, and I must admit to being quite confused by the diversity and number of computer languages. We've got a program running here which lists the BASIC, COBOL, Fortran, Pascal. There's an absolutely dazzling number of languages. Now, how on earth
Did
do we
anybody
tell
actually
what
use
languages
any of these
presumably all like
languages
French,
other than
German,
BASIC?
Spanish, and so on. How do we tell
I know
one
the,
from
was it
another?
the fourth? What did the Jupiter have? I think it was fourth,
in
wasn't it?
Eskimo, there's hundreds of names for snow, because they wanted to talk a lot about snow. In Arabic, apparently, there's lots of names, lots of words to do with camels. And similarly, there's been attempts at computer languages to make programming easier and easier. And so many different attempts have been made at specialized languages, general purpose languages. We end up with this terrible confusion.
And which one are we using?
We're going to use BASIC, and that is a very popular language. It's a popular language for people to start learning how to program. And this particular machine runs in BASIC.
And most microcomputers work on BASIC, do they?
Yes, they do. Almost every microcomputer would have a BASIC. And although it's the most popular, it has certain problems with it. First of all, it's very easy to make mistakes in BASIC. And secondly, there isn't really a standard BASIC that you can use on every microcomputer. They're all in some way a little bit different.
If we wanted to use a different language on this, could we?
Yes, there's a much more professional language called Pascal, which is a much more disciplined language. It's more rigorous, and it's more difficult to make mistakes, and it's also more transportable.
But more difficult to learn?
Yes, and it's for a beginner it will be more difficult to learn. So that's
I remember
why
that White Lightning,
many of
yeah.
them start off in BASIC.
And BASIC, which is running on our microcomputer here, was originally designed to make programming easy to learn for people like me. But there are other, less common languages which have been designed for doing very special jobs. Jill Neville.
This is what engineers call a drive shaft.
beg your-
and you'll
all
find
right,
one
okay,
like
if it
it
was
in
something
most
else there,
heavy
Jill.
vehicles and most heavy machinery. Though it's a complicated shape, full of curves and angles, with a thread top and bottom, it can be made in just 4 minutes from a plain steel bar like this one. What's more, it can be made on a general-purpose lathe, which could equally well be turning out bolts or pipe fittings. Modern lathes are, of course, very sophisticated pieces of machinery, and for some time they've been fully automated. But it's only with the growing need for flexibility that they've actually been controlled by computer. But of course, you can't just stand a computer by a lathe and expect it to turn out components. Someone's got to tell it what to do.
Good old-fashioned
How do you get it across
British
to a computer that it's now in charge of a very
overall
complicated lathe?
chocolate
Well,
brown
first of all,
overall.
this computer, same as any other computer, needs a main program.
Absolutely classic that. Look around you.
the
Yeah, I bought the
simple set
I
of
bought the
instructions,
first and
the
second
spindle
series
and
of
chuck
that.
arrangement
But I'll wait
can
until you
make
actually
it
watch it
revolve at
again.
the required speed. The cutting tools can be made to be brought into position and cut the shape required for that particular component. The tailstock can be brought in to support the work, or from the instructions.
Well, let's go back to the computer itself. If I've got this drive shaft in my hand and I want another one,
I
how do
beg
tell
your
the
pardon,
computer
she's got a drive
that's
shaft
what
in
I
her
want?
hand and
First
she
of
wants
all, there's a
another
set of
one.
instructions written and punched out on a paper tape, which are then stored in the memory of the computer. And the first instruction tells the machine that it's going to run in metric units. G71 means metric. M42 means a gear change.
So each of those is really a code for a rather specific process.
That's
is
right.
it?
Each line or block is to do that. We can perhaps look a little bit further along in the program. G96 means a constant cutting speed. So it means the material is being cut at a constant rate.
So what you've got here is a very simple code unlocking a whole sequence of actions which is already stored in the memory. So, to make a drive shaft like this, you need a special language, a form of code if you like. The language may seem strange at first, but it's easy to learn. And though its applications are limited elsewhere, here on the factory floor, it's exactly the right tool for the job.
There you go, another drive shaft for Jill.
Well, controlling complicated machines like that one is something that computers are increasingly being used for. Everybody's seen film of robots putting cars together. Well, we've got a small robot here. It's kind of little brother. But although it's only an arm, it's still capable of a surprisingly wide range of movements. Now, Mac,
That's the only robot that we ever saw back in the 80s. That's
it
Arm.
instruct the arm to do what I want it to do.
Well, the arm is capable of 12 different sorts of movements, left, right, up, down, open, close, and so on. And each one of those movements is controlled by a program that we could store in the computer in what we call a subroutine.
And presumably that's
How many bloody suits has Mac got?
And we probably wouldn't.
Right. So that means we've got to write a little interpreter so we can put in English commands to make the arm do just what we want it to do.
Okay, now there's the beginning
Yeah, I
of a
think the
program
old
here.
turtle
We've got
logo comes
print
later on.
command question mark, which is fairly clear. When you run
Mr.
the program,
T.
you get the word command question mark coming up on the screen. That's easy. It's asking you for a command. The next bit is input command string, which tells the computer to expect a string of letters which will put together a command word.
Right.
Now, what's the next step?
Well, the next step is to make that word that you put in, select out the appropriate subroutine that's going to make the arm do what you want it to do. For example, if you want it to go up.
So it's going to be one of those if-then things, isn't
That's
it?
right,
You're gonna,
yes.
you're going to write. The next instruction, I bet, is going to be if the command string equals...
I wonder if he was actually putting this act on for this
Then
program or
find
whether
the
it was
subroutine says
this is legitimate.
That's
He's
precisely
actually
correct.
trying to
But
learn
you
this.
can't write it quite that way in BASIC. Not quite, but very similar. So you say, if the command string equals up, then get the subroutine, which starts at line 1000, where we've put all this code that makes the arm
You
go
could put
up.
it on any line.
Yeah, I think
Exactly.
Mac is a bit of a
1000
smug
convenient
bastard,
size.
to
And
be
you
fair,
don't
but
actually say go to subroutine, you shorten that and say go sub. So you just say go sub 1000, which is where the
That's one of those
first
bits
line
of
our
basic
program
language, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So the next line is going to be 30. Who would have guessed it? And if... String, that funny dollar sign.
Right.
Equals.
Yes.
Not is isn't allowed. It's got to be equals. Well, let's say up.
In quotes.
In quotes.
Mac is
Then,
a
very important,
cunt.
then...
Go sub.
G-O-S-U-B.
That's it. 1000.
I just write the number 1,000.
1000, that's it. That's where that particular subroutine starts. That's its first line.
Why
Well,
couldn't you
instead of
just put
typing
then
more,
go
you
to
have to do one
1,000?
for every
Why couldn't you
movement
not do
Well,
that?
we've got our labour-saving tape, so it's all been done for us. Right, splendid. We can load this now. Let me get this right. And what's it called?
Robot, in quotes.
Start
Switch
the
it
tape
on.
running,
What's going on with the
and
lines?
then
What's
press
that
the
all about?
return key, and it's searching
Searching
now.
for the program,
Okay.
and then it'll begin. Now it's beginning to read it in.
Right.
And of course, on the cassette, it's quite slow. It takes a bit of time to get it in. It will be a lot quicker on disc, but they cost correspondingly more. Little
Right.
floppy disks.
Right. And it's now actually reading through the program, which is all on there, and absorbing it into
It's
the
reading
computer once again.
every one of those subroutines
Yeah.
that control the movements of the arm.
Oh,
and
right.
also
Did
our
that have lines,
interpreter,
Colin?
which we can type in commands in ordinary English, which is make the arm do what we want it to do.
Right. Well, any second now, with any luck, when the tape's played its all into the computer, we should be there.
There
it
we go.
is.
We're
Yeah.
right at it now.
We can,
so let's list it and make sure it's in. I'll list the first bit so we can look at our. It's in
Make
the
sure
first
it's
9
not-
lines, which is
it's
our
not
link
Mac's
to.
list
So
of,
list 10 to
porn
90,
videos.
10,90.
10,90.
Right.
That's a bit more basic jargon, is it?
If we said list the whole lot, we'd have all the subroutines
Oh, I
listed
see.
out.
But comma instead of dash.
That's it.
Okay.
And there it is. If command up, then goes to 1,000. Down starts at 2,000.
Evening, Bob. How
left
are you,
starts
mate?
at 3,000. And so we can try it out and see if it works.
Right, we can run it. Oh, great. What is your command, oh master? Well, shall we try it on up and see what happens?
Well, it works.
Wonderful. What's the next command? Left, shall we try? It's tremendous. That's absolutely terrific. We've made it go. It's very gratifying.
But of course, these words don't mean anything to the computer. We can change
Obviously,
them
what we
as
can
any
see is
way
we.
we don't have to
What do you
use
think,
up
Kenny?
or left or anything.
What we can see is a wee guy behind the robot actually manually operating it.
Yes, well, let's do it.
Okay.
We have to escape from the program and get back to where we were. So there we go. And now we should listen.
Kenny, are you still on tomorrow night?
90.
Comma 90.
Comma 90.
Has to be, doesn't it? Right.
Well, there's the command for up, number 30.
It's
We'll
number
retype
30.
it,
All right.
and we can put anything
We can just
you like.
retype it down there.
Yes,
It doesn't
that's
matter, and it'll still take it. Okay.
Right.
Good stuff. I think it's
Command
7
string.
for 7:30. So I'll see you for about 7 o'clock tomorrow night,
Anything
mate.
you like.
Well, let's say Mac. shall we?
Oh, that's very nice.
Mac.
Then goes to 1,000,
As
which is simply
the
going to take us right
one.
into that subroutine, which starts at instruction
Okay.
1,000.
We can run it now, can we?
That's him. Run.
Yeah, 7
Oh, master.
4:15ish.
What is your command, oh master? Well, look here, arm. I want you to go Mac, M-A-C.
Mac's a legend.
Go. Great, it works. So I suppose what we're actually saying is that the arm only speaks a kind of arm language, and if we speak English or any
Oh,
other
good stuff,
language,
Bob.
we
Listen,
have to
I
have an
will.
interpreter to
I'll
convert
answer
what we
that
speak
in
into
the
what
waffle
makes
I'm
that
going to
thing
record
go.
tomorrow.
Yes, the great adventure of it is you could
Enjoy it.
type anything
You're in for a
create
treat,
it
especially if we
anything
get
you
decent
like. You could
weather.
L there, or you could put it in French or German or anything you like.
And there we have it, guys. Right, listen, we're not going to go for another one. It was only meant to be one episode. We've managed to arc out 3 in total. Hope you enjoyed that as much as I have. It's dry as hell, but you know what? I love all that kind of stuff. It's what got me into computers. It's why here I am 40 years later. I'm sitting watching this shite with you guys. Matt Boney, there we go. Yeah, there we go. That was 3 episodes of what do you call it? The computer program. There's another. There's 10 in total, so we can maybe watch a few of them next week. So anyway, listen, guys. I didn't advertise it for very long. Thanks very, very much to everybody that's tuned in tonight. And yeah, have a nice night, guys. And I will see you soon. Take care.